Well, everybody, it's 6 o'clock, and our distinguished guest is here, Thad Fisco from Portland Kettle Works. And so we're going to have another great session. So as I mentioned, Thad has done many things. He does contracting. He's built out a few breweries, and he now has Portland Kettle Works, which makes systems, which he'll tell you about. So he has a lot of experience with equipment, site issues, and the sort of facility issues. So I thought that would be great for him to come this week because we've been talking about these issues between last week and this week. And he can address a lot of questions. I know we're going to have a lot of people tonight. We'll probably get up to 40 or more, but we'll try and get everybody's questions. So let me know when you want me to do the slides.
Yeah, I can't remember what they were. You see them?
Yeah, Thad did this in the fall, and so he may need to be refreshed on what some of these slides show.
No, it's okay. They pretty much guide what I'm going to say, so they're helpful.
You want me to start with them?
Go ahead, go for it.
Okay.
So yeah, Portland Kettle Works. So Portland Kettle Works, we've been in business building brewing equipment for a few years now. We are in Portland and specialize kind of in smaller systems, smallest being 3-barrel. We go all the way up through 15, and we're bidding 20-barrel systems as well. Very comfortable in all those sizes. We've got about 55 breweries out all over the place. Most of them are in the United States. We've got breweries as far south as Ecuador, and sold one up so far north in Canada, it's unbelievable. We just saw where it was on the map.
Really?
It's in permafrost.
Permafrost brewery.
Anyway, it's pretty neat. And yeah, we learned an awful lot and had met a ton of great people getting into the brewing business. Just a fun business to be in.
Wait, have you shipped any to Europe? Because we actually have about 5 European students in the class right now.
Haven't shipped to Europe. We've been quoting, I think we quoted a couple systems for Spain. We've got somebody coming from Norway in a week to meet us. So I think it's just a matter of time. It's interesting that people are looking at U.S. systems in Europe.
Well, I think the Europeans are quite a bit more expensive.
Yeah,
generally, unless
more
they
expensive.
used. There's some pretty crappy used ones out there.
Yeah.
Sorry. No offense.
You shoot that next slide.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, what I'll concentrate on speaking about, since it sounds like this is really the gist of it, is what you guys are going to be looking to need in order to start your brewery, both space-wise, correct, and for utilities and so forth.
And some people have cideries and distilleries.
It's really not very different for distilleries. I think the first thing that you need to come to terms with is how much beer you want to make, and it's going to dictate to some degree how large of a space that you need, and also are you going to be working with a pub style setup where you're going to serve food, or are you more a tasting room, or are you going to attempt to do straight distribution only? I think we sell quite a few 3-barrel systems for people who are starting out. They're on tight budgets generally. There's not a lot of economy of scale at that size, so they're going to be smaller operation, probably trying to sell hopefully 100% of your beer over the bar, since you're making gross of $600 a keg or so versus $100 a keg, which can just the dynamics of the business financially are a huge difference if you can sell straight to consumers. If you're looking at a 3-barrel system, we've got, I think the smallest ones that we've sold in spaces are maybe only 400 feet, where you're going to be able to put 3 or 4 taps on, and that's for just the brewing area, and then a tap room or a bar associated with that. Once you move up into 5 and 7, and even 10-barrel system, you're much more comfortable over 1,000 feet. 1,500 feet is a good solid space to be thinking about. When you get to 15-barrel, and these are minimums, by the way. I think your space you need to look at is closer to 2,000 square feet or even 2,500. And I think one of the biggest issues that new brewers and people get into brewing find is that they didn't plan enough for expansion. You buy one brew house, you can add a lot of tanks onto that brew house. You can double and triple batch on a daily basis. So you're going to want a lot of space on the floor where you can put additional fermenters, especially, and up your capacity over time. The second thing that's really important to kind of take note of is whether you're going to use a steam-fired system or you're going to go with a direct-fired system. Direct fire is usually run propane or natural gas. Steam-fired systems, now you have a steam boiler, low pressure, under 15 psi, and that boiler is going to either be run on propane, natural gas, or in some strange circumstances, you may run on oil. One of those that's coming up. Be the first one that we do like that. There is an economy of scale in steam once you get up into the slightly larger systems like 10 or 15 barrel. A lot of the 15 barrel systems that we sell will buy a 3 barrel system at the same time. So we'll design it so they're running both the 3 barrel and the 15 barrel on one boiler. That you're really getting economies at that point. You know, steam is nice to work with.
Steam and heating.
Direct fire. Okay, so one thing about steam is that this is very, it's all from brewers' perspective. Steam is going to allow you to preheat your mash tun, and also if you want to step mash, and a lot of brewers no longer bother with step mashing, but some of them do. It also allows you to pinpoint and keep your strike temperature within even as close as 1/10 of a degree of where you want it to be. So it's a very accurate system when it comes to the mashing process. It's also more efficient, in my opinion, in the boil process. I know, like today, we brewed on a steam system, and at the point where we had filled the kettle, we boiled in 20 minutes. So after all transfer was finished in 20 minutes, we had a really hard, strong rolling boil going. That's because steam is super efficient. When it goes from the gaseous state to the liquid state, and it's condensed, it's dropped all of its energy. That energy winds up into your wort, creating temperature rise and a quicker boil and a really good, robust boil. All really, when you get to breweries that are 30 barrel and up, even 20 barrel, there aren't very many direct fires at that size. You're really looking at steam systems just because of the efficiencies you get out of it. Again, that same boiler in steam can also run your hot liquor tank. So you're using one boiler, heating both, all 3 mash tun hot liquor with an infinite amount of water heated up. So
utility costs between them?
I think that on the larger scale, probably on just about all the scales, your utility costs are going to be lower with steam. The difference between, and the reason a lot of the sort of intermediary systems, 5, 7, and 10 barrel go to direct fire, and 15, there's a lot of direct fire 15 barrel systems out there too, we call them. The reason that people buy into direct fire on those is because you avoid the cost of the steam generation. So you typically $30,000 plus or minus for a boiler, and the steam piping in place would not be an unusual amount of money to spend, which if you do direct fire, all that money is saved. So a lot of really good beer come out of direct fire systems too. So it's you kind of have to look at your particular needs and what your expectations are and what your budget is, and work backwards from there to decide what system.
John's asking, do you need RLIM exchange to treat the water for BFW for that scaling?
No, once the steam system typically will it depends on your water for one thing, but typically you'll get the water treated one time. Once it goes into the system, then it's closed loop. It just stays in there. So it's going to pump back to the boiler and get reused. The key is not to exchange that water unless you're going to retreat it. Hope that answers the question.
And then recouping your extra cost in utilities, You have to do the math on that.
Yeah, I haven't run that.
Yeah, I think it probably would take quite a bit of time, depending on the size that you are. We could do a little break-even analysis on that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I mean, the reason that steam becomes real popular for us at 15 barrel size is because even if it's nice for brewers to have the flexibility, or even 20 barrel size, is to have that flexibility, have a big system that they're going to brew. It's their workhorse. They're going to make a lot of beer on it. But then, like we were today at Bowie Brewing, have something that you can adjust your recipes, test out new hop strains, do whatever it is that you make small batches of just wild concoctions that will be once a year. And there's a lot of value in that to a brewer. I mean, they like to have fun with something small, and then when they hit their mark on something, they'll scale it up to the larger system. And when you're running two systems like that, steam, it makes all the sense in the world. Especially, also, I'll back up and I digress down to the 3-barrel system. It's almost a break even one way or the other going steam or direct fire on those. And the reason is because the way the system is set up, you either have to have a hood over the brew house to evacuate up to like 500,000 BTUs of gas that's burning underneath the 3 burners, or you work with a steam boiler, which offsets the cost of the hood, and now you have the advantage of working with steam. So we're finding a lot of traction on the smaller steam systems right now, not having to use a hood. You probably have some. That system right there is typical of a 3-barrel steam system. So it has another thing that's nice about the 3-barrel steam system. Ours is that it has a catwalk in between, so you can stand up on the brew stand and work dump your grains into the mash tun, stir them, and then also be up on top looking up at the boil. So there's no working off the ladders. On a direct fire system, you lose that advantage because you have a ton of flame coming up underneath. The stand is hot, therefore no catwalk.
How's the steam system with back-to-back brewing? Any negative effects?
No. We have a brewery in Salem that actually recently brewed 4 batches in a day. Those 3-barrel steam systems, so really fast and efficient. So there's a 10-barrel system, and for Portland Kettle Works, our 5, 7, 10, and 15 all kind of look the same. The footprints just change. When you get into a larger size system like this, this is a direct fire. The little square boxes that you see off the 2 tanks to the left and at the top are those are for the those are the vents for the gas that come out of the hot liquor tank, which is on the back of the brew house there, and to the left, that's the oil kettle. You typically size a hot liquor tank into a brewery, anything over 5-barrel and up. We size a hot liquor tank at a minimum of 2 times the capacity of the brewery. And there's an efficiency there that we found that when if a brewer comes in the morning, begins to brew with about say about 1/3 of the tank of their hot liquor tank full at 180-degree water, use that for mashing in and sparging. By the time they finish that process, they have a little bit of water left that when they transfer their wort and they begin to boil, they can do some CIP, clean their mash tun. When they then come out of the boil kettle and knock out, they recycle all that chiller water, which is going in usually 50, 60, 70 degrees, comes out at around 140 degrees, goes right back into the hot liquor tank, and you'll actually fill the tank almost all the way with just that process. So you have 2/3 of the tank of hot liquor, 180-degree water in the afternoon to CIP, do another batch of beer if you want, whatever you need to do, and the object is to draw it down enough the next morning so that you can recycle again on your next knockout. So it's a really efficient system that way.
So some more questions about what if you're only brewing 2 to 3 days a week? Steam still makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does, because I think that what you're going to find eventually is you're not going to be brewing 2 to 3 times a week. Eric, I don't know where you are, but I got a hold of a blog the other day that somebody sent to me, and it was really interesting. That it's like things that you wish you knew before you got into the brewing business.
Oh, I think I posted it.
Did you? Okay, so yeah, the first thing on there was, capacity, and it's the ability to be able to make as much beer as you can, because you can't tell how much people are going to love it. They usually do. So, yeah, I think, you can brew every day on steam, and you can brew every day on direct fire. The boiler doesn't need to run if you're not brewing, so you can shut it off. Same with the direct fire system. It's as simple as just not running it. And we actually put a burner in our hot liquor tank. That's why both those kettles there have burners on them. We use the same burner in the boil kettle that we do in the hot liquor tank, slightly smaller. And so if you're not going to brew for a day, you just don't turn it on. Within an hour of turning it on, you're going to have, or an hour and a half, you're going to have 180-degree water again. So it's a pretty efficient system that way. Not like a water heater where you just keep it hot all the time.
Still trying to figure out the efficiency. So Todd wants to know, is there a barrel size where direct fire is more efficient than steam? Sounded like you said 3 barrel.
Yeah, 3. I think the offset on the 3, I don't want to confuse the situation. The offset on the 3 is the fact that you need a hood if you do direct fire, and it's about the same. What we learned was that the cost of the hood could be almost entirely offset by the cost of a steam boiler. So at that point, it made sense to just think about steam in the 3-barrel system, because you get the catwalk, and the system is more efficient to actually run, and more efficient for the brewer.
In terms of working.
In terms of working with it, right? So their brew day is going to be faster and easier, less strenuous. 5, 7, and 10-barrel systems, and 15-barrel systems, it's really a break. I mean, if you want to save money, if it's a budgetary issue, it's a direct fire. You're going to want to buy a direct fire system, because there's no sense in putting in a steam system at those sizes. There's not enough of efficiency of scale at those sizes to warrant doing it just for the fact that you're going to put it in. Where it really becomes more crucial is if you get 2 systems in one. From Portland Kettle Works perspective, if you're going to put a 3-barrel in and a 10 or a 15, for instance, so you have a small system and a large system, steam becomes very attractive at that point. The $10,000 that you're going to spend on a hood, if you can put that for your small system, you can put that into the steam boiler, all the pieces start to coalesce, they come together, and you can see having a steam brewery at that point.
Rajam, he's the one that's our longest brewery. You need extra hot liquor tank capacity to use on-demand hot water, or can you use the same size?
I'd be interested to know what size brewery you're putting in. The issue.
3-barrel? I think I have a 3-barrel.
Yeah, 3. 3 you can do. You can. That's what I was going to ask. Is if you're at a small system like that, you can get away with on-demand hot water. As soon as you go beyond that, your capacity-wise, you're not going to be able to keep up trying to use on-demand. 5, maybe a 5-barrel system. But the issue is, once you get to even 5 barrels, I know in Portland, I think you'll probably see a trend around the country as time goes on. The cost of water to breweries is going to continue to go up, water and sewer charges. So you're going to want to try and be as efficient with your water as you can. And having a large capacity hot water tank means that you're not just dumping your chiller water on the floor down the drain ultimately.
It's a valuable resource.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exciting things like floor plans.
Yeah, both considerations. That looks familiar. Yep. So this is an interesting floor plan here. I'm looking at this last time. So the issue, that looks nice. It looks very organized and systematic from the standpoint of a nice layout. Great little brew pub setting. We've got the bright tanks that are behind the bar there, and you have the brewery down in the lower right-hand corner. For efficiencies from the perspective of a brewing operation, you could probably make it worse, but you'd have to try. The issue that you have is all of that beer that you get in those fermenters in the lower right-hand corner has to get transferred over to the bright tanks up behind the bar. and you've now run yourself into 2 strip drains. So you've got a long strip drain and a lot of drainage at one side of the operation and another one in your brewery. The actual brewery isn't set up badly because having a center brew house with a double loaded set of tanks like that is actually a really efficient way to go, because now you can run hose back and forth and you can do everything right in that area.
Is it down here?
Yeah, and I'll tell you that what I've learned from manufacturing at Portland Kettle Works is having small space is not necessarily an impediment, because it forces you to be efficient in how you use the space. And efficiency in a brewery, I mean, I've seen breweries where people have a lot of space, so what they do is they try and use it, and they wind up running their tanks in an inefficient place. Well, that can look great, but when you have your farthest tank 80 feet away from your brew house, that's 100 feet of brew hose every time you need to fill that tank, and 100 feet coming back when you have to get that beer back into a bright tank. So being compact and thinking about being compact and how you can minimize the number of feet that your brewer needs to drag hose to get through his brew day or her brew day is really should be paramount from the efficiency standpoint. And a lot of folks, you know, they like this in particular brewery here tossed efficiency to the wind, but they're after something else. When you sit at that bar, you're going to be looking at a rack of 10 or 12 beautiful stainless steel tanks behind glass in a cooler. You know, there's a lot of wow factor to that. And so we run into a lot of people that do that too. We tell them and try and guide them into the most efficient setup, but they scrap it. They'll use some of it and they'll toss another part out because they want to have maximum visual impact, which, you know, makes sense.
We have a few more questions. Would a 15-barrel system be too large for a brew pub seating 100 to 150?
I don't think so. No. I think that you'd be fine on a 15-barrel system, and because you're probably going to want to distribute a little bit of beer as well. So whatever extra capacity you do wind up with, put it out on the road, but you know, sell it to other bars. At 100 to 150, you probably get by with a 10. We're only going to serve beer right there at your bar, so you'll have a little bit of extra capacity, or you'll brew a little less, which is okay too.
Oh, this is a good one. For a 20-barrel system, could you use a 20-barrel hot liquor tank with several 180-degree on-demand units in series?
I think you could, but I think you would, you know, if you're going to go to 20-barrel, I would say that you should have, depending on how many tanks you're going to put in as well. So if you're going to 20-barrel, you're pretty much, you're going down the road of doing distribution brewing. So you're going to make a lot of beer. A lot of your tanks are going to be 60-barrel tanks. And you may even run into 80-barrel tanks, do 2 double brews in 2 days in a row and fill up 80-barrel tanks, or even bigger than that possibly. And a big hot liquor tank is going to, in cases like that, is super useful. You know, you may want a 60-barrel hot liquor tank. I'd advise in a case like that to go to a bigger hot liquor tank than smaller. So minimum 40 and maybe even 60-barrel.
Pat's asking, does the brew house have to be against the wall?
No, not necessarily.
But I do caution against the tanks being shown a lot to the public. It creates a lot of maintenance.
No, it does. All that. I mean, I look at that, and the first thing that comes to mind is, are you going to keep your glass clean behind that? Because if you don't keep it clean, it doesn't look good. And it's a lot of work to keep it clean. And
we had a copper kettle that you just had to clean all the time to make it look good. And it was a nightmare. Here.
Okay, so yeah, looking at the utility packages for the different systems. So actually, I have an updated slide on that too that I'm going to give you for the next class. You can distribute it in for these guys. There's a little bit of extra stuff I've added on. Your boil kettle, the Portland Kettle Works boil kettle has 3 steam zones, but you know, just working from a schematic standpoint, you're going to have on the boil kettle a steam line that feeds in. It's actually two steam lines in and 2 returns coming out of it. because there's different zones on it. And you're going to have on the mash tun, which this one doesn't show, you're going to have, we've made standard steam jacketing on the side and the bottom of that kettle as well. So you're going to have steam inlets on both and steam returns on both sides of that kettle. And so a steam system, all that steam piping is installed by a steam contractor. It's a good time to kind of talk about that. You're going to hire a general contractor more than likely to help you put your brewery together. That general contractor is going to hire an electrician, probably going to hire the steam contractor, going to hire maybe the glycol contractor to do the glycol work for your fermenters and possibly for your bright tanks, or you as the brewery owner may do that yourself. It's kind of a little bit out of the scope of the general contractor. The general contractor is definitely going to have a plumber on site, and they're going to have an HVAC company doing your heating and ventilation work. For us, when we go to an install on a brewery, when we walk in, we always are working hand in hand with the general contractor and right under them, but really kind of as a partnership, and we sort of take over the management of their subcontractors that they have on site to get all of these utilities dropped and put in the right place for the brew house. And there's a lot of communication before we even show up, and after the system is sold, while it's being built, directly, like we're talking to the steam contractor, we're talking to the plumber, we've had conversations with them. Typically, I've had conversations with them, and they've seen these drawings, so they know basically very roughly where they need to drop their utilities and where they're going to land things before we even show up with the equipment. Same with the electrician. It's just a lot of communication goes on, and it's really important to have good communication at that point. There's, that same blog I know these guys got to read. The one thing that I read, that one of the things that caught my eye was that, allow for 3 times as much time or double what you think it's going to take. When we say that we're going to get a system delivered to you, we're generally going to be on time with it. Where we find most of the problems arise is when we finish a system and the brewery is not ready. So we wind up having to store it for a little while. We do that a lot, sometimes for a long time, until the brewery gets to a position where we can actually ship the system out. So the more involved we can be in conversation with the contractors early, let them know what's expected, let them know what to anticipate when the equipment shows up, it just makes the whole process go a lot smoother. Not a lot of power requirement for the actual brew house. The big power consumption comes in your cooling systems generally. Brew house, literally, our brew house runs on 110 volts. You could plug it into the wall if we put a power cord on it, it would go, because it's all contactors and low voltage stuff that is commanding larger things to do something someplace else. A lot of plumbing stuff goes on around the brew house, though, because you've got mixing valves and you need to hit hot and cold water. Plumber usually runs the hot liquor tank water over to the brew house, which now you're off city water pressure. So we have a control loop that goes back. So the electrician runs wires for a control loop back to a pump. That way, when you demand water any place in the brewery, a pump turns on and it pumps water out, hot water out to whatever that locate will pressurizes the entire system at the same time. Yeah.
There's a few questions here.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you can speak to the sewer systems, but Rob's asking about, are sewer systems required? What happens if you only have septic?
Well, we did a brewery in Central Oregon, and they were on septic, and what they had to do was put in a retaining tank. A couple things they had to do. It was fairly interesting. One thing they had to do was they have totes, plastic tote boxes, and so for their washout, like from their mash tun where they've got heavy sediments, they're actually taking a lot of grain, spent grain and stuff. They're actually putting that into totes, loading them up, and the farmer's taking them away and dumping them in his field. There's no caustics in it. It's just water and really heavy residuals. Once they get past that, they actually have an underground holding tank that they had to install. Municipality made them put it in. And I don't know where that goes. I think they probably have to have that pumped.
And that's what it costed.
That's for everything else, right? And it
That's
stays,
that.
yeah, stays out of the septic system then. So it's something to be aware of. I think if you put caustics to the septic system, it's not a septic system anymore. I mean, you'll just kill the bacteria because it's nasty stuff. So that's something to keep in mind for sure. You know, most breweries in Portland are running on 4-inch sewer lines, so that's regular capacitance and typical commercial capacity sewer line is fine. And maybe like a 1-inch water line coming into the building is sufficient. Get into 20 or 30 barrel sizes, you're going to want to go up from there. Maybe go to a 6-inch sewer line and 1.5 inch water. So
I'm not sure in terms of Dan's question. A recommendation for fermenter size was if you have a 15 barrel system, should you be looking at 15 barrel fermenters, or would be better to have 1 or 2 30 barrel? It depends if you're going to have a flagship. I mean, if you look at someplace like Boneyard, which is IPA all the time, they need to have bigger fermenters with their systems because they're putting out so much of that one. I don't know what your feelings are about that.
I agree 100%. I think having if I were starting a brewery, and I had the finances to do it, I would put in 1 double capacity fermenter right off the bat, because you're going to have one beer that is absolutely your stakeholder. Yeah, that's it. And you're going to be tying up all your smaller fermenters trying to push this stuff through all the time. When if you had one big one, you could kind of nail it and just dedicate it to the cause. A lot of 15 barrel breweries, we put only 30 barrel tanks in. So it also depends on what you're doing with that. If you're primarily working in a brew pub setting and you want to have a lot of different taps on, then you're going to want to have a lot of 15 barrel tanks. If you're dealing more and your business plan is predicated around a lot of distribution, then you want bigger tanks for sure, because you want to be as efficient as you can with your fermentation time.
Yeah, all of our fermenters and bright tanks were double the capacity of our brew system. Yeah, at Wasatch.
That system,
we had like a 15 barrel system.
Yeah, so you have 30 barrel tanks.
I want to know, is all that communication that you do with plumbers, et cetera, and planning included in your price when you quote out a system?
Yes, it is. And the installation is an option. I mean, it's a line item, but we've had a couple people who have preferred not to have us come and do the installation. We spend a lot of time on the phone. Generally, they would have been better off. They would have saved money in the end if they just would have had us come and do it and try and tell them that, but the way it goes.
Let me just jump to Christian. Do you match 1 double capacity fermenter with a double capacity bright stirring tank? Yes.
Yep.
Yes, because you're going to go from one right into the other through, whether or not you're filtering and then package up that or go into kegs from that.
Yeah.
And you don't want to go into 2 separate tanks.
Yeah, if you're kegging, you can run 4 fermenters to 1 bright tank. That seems to be a pretty efficient brewing style that I've run into a lot of brewers where they'll go 4 to 1 and then they'll get out. The bright tank is always working. It works basically 4 shifts, but they're kegging out. They get it done, they keg it out, tank's empty, next fermenter rolls into it. So
now here's one about zoning and legal from Connor. Are you inhibited in delivering any other systems until zoning or legal regulations are sufficed? You must be a zoning permit or any other sort of permit in order to begin to deliver. That's not your problem.
No, you don't have issues with that.
Well, they're going to pay him then.
Yeah.
Let's see. What about installs for Canadians, such as John? Would you come here to install?
Absolutely. I actually love to go to Hawaii. Micronesia would be nice.
John's some lovely Canadian area.
Yeah, I'd love to go to Canada too.
It's not that far from here to go to Canada, except for over to, the east part of the country. Let's see.
Direct fire. Yeah, so direct fire system, I'll do it real briefly, is, similar to steam on all the plumbing side of it. The main difference is that you're not running steam lines to both the mash tun and the boil kettle. You have a gas line and you have a vent runoff the kettle. It goes to atmosphere outside the building, and it's not a forced vent, it's just B vent, so kind of like a wood stove vent material, goes up through the roof, and that's where the gas is vent out of the building. So it's, from the standpoint of installation, all the valving that goes, there's a lot of valving in a steam system, and there's insulated pipe that runs all over the building. I mean, it's done well. It's a very impressive system, really a lot of power and really neat to see. With the direct fire, it's a practically plug and play. You have to vent out of the building. You put a steam line to the burner. You turn it on. You've got heat. Boom, fire. Simple as that. Okay, so that's hot liquor tank utility setup. So I mentioned that the hot liquor tank is off the city water system. So the first time you use the hot liquor tank and thereafter, you will often put some city water into the tank. Water should be filtered at a minimum to get the chlorine out of it. Chlorine and stainless steel don't cooperate with one another very well. Mainly, it does funny things to the stainless steel. So you want to filter your water, fill up the hot liquor tank, and then what you see there is that hot liquor tank has a pump. Pump is operated at the brewer station at the brew house, and there's a variable frequency drive. You'll often hear them called VFDs at the brew house, which will allow that pump to run slow or fast. It's kind of like a dimmer switch for the pump. So you can have the pump run at a trickle, and you can have it run at 60 gallons a minute. It's just whatever amount of water you want it delivering. Ultimately, you have another control over that. You have a valve, which you open and close by hand. So if you have the pump turned on full blast, if you only open the valve a little bit, still just a little bit of water is going to come out, although it's going to be under a lot of pressure at that point. VFD is a really important thing in the brewery. All the pumps should be run on VFDs as much as possible, because you really do want to have that micro control over work transfer in all the brewing operations, and the amount of hot liquor and cold liquor if you have a cold liquor tank, and how all that stuff is delivered. Fairly simple process to put them in. They have to be 3-phase power, but they can. The VFD can transform single-phase power to 3-phase power, which will allow them to become a dimming element. So kind of a dimmer switch element where it'll vary the speed. The electricians know about all that stuff. So
let's look at Nicholas is saying, on the direct fire system, it appears that the plate chiller is off the mash tun. Is that normal? Let's see. Let's go back.
Yeah, that's it's representative actually. So the way that we build our systems is that if you go to our website, I think you'll see some examples. We put a manifold for all of your hose connections underneath the mash tun and on the front. Behind that is the pump and all the sanitary piping. The pump is kept very low. It's almost literally almost on the floor. It's under the mash tun. So when the mash tun ships, all this stuff is there. You stand it up and put it in position and connect a few pipes, and you have all your hard piping in position then. A lot of breweries will put the plate chiller on the outside of the mash tun, but we found, just with the way we've designed ours, that we can keep everything compact and it's safe and it's clean under there. You'll also see breweries where a lot of that pumping and the pump and the plate chiller and a lot of gear winds up underneath the catwalk. We don't prefer that, because especially if you're early in your brewing operation, you have an auger in yet and a grist case and a mill. You're going to be going up there with bags of grain. You're dropping grain all over your pump and your plate chiller, and it just kind of turns into a funky mess underneath there. This way it's nice and clean. Stays nice and clean.
Let's see. In the case of quite hard city water, which needs water treatment, is there a rule of thumb for how much floor space the treatment equipment requires per barrel of brewing capacity?
I wish I could answer that, but I have no idea. I know that there are water treatment issues, and to get efficiencies, you need to strip that water down and maybe even rebuild it in some cases if you want to get it exactly the way you want. But I don't know a lot about that. I haven't run into it. I think in any of the breweries that we put in.
Yeah, we had crappy water in Phoenix when I put
Yeah.
a project there, and so we had to treat it and have all this fallout and then
Junk.
put new stuff
Put
in.
new stuff in, yeah.
Question from John: are there any opportunities for heat recovery with the steam system? Using it for heating other things, warm the floors, sidewalks.
Sure. I mean, you could definitely look into doing that. I think that absolutely there's opportunity to do it. I don't really anybody has. Most of the the thing is with most of the water, if you run your brewery efficiently and you have a hot liquor tank at a large enough capacity, you get to a point where you're losing very, very little water. Almost all of it winds up getting recycled. The water that does go down the drain has caustic in it, so it's not anything that you can really do anything with anyway.
I mean, my only concern, I think, John, talking about heating other things, is that when you want the steam just for brewing, then you're going to take the steam away from those other applications because you want to concentrate it just for brewing.
Yeah, that's a good
And
point.
then, if you actually needed to have offices warm or something like that, they're not going to be warm when you're brewing because you'll want the steam just for that.
Yeah, I think the rule of thumb is about 100,000 BTU per barrel of beer. The smaller, like a 3-barrel system, you get away with a little bit smaller boiler than that. But if you've got a 10-barrel system and you're going to run steam, a 1,000,000 BTU boiler is good, and it's always good to go up a little bit just to make sure that you've got the capacity. So if you have all your solenoid valves, steam system click open at once, you're not going to lose your boil, for instance. It's still got enough juice to make that go. Yes. Yeah, hot utility. So this utility, that's the steam hot liquor tanks, basically just like the direct fire, except now you're running steam to a heat exchanger in there.
Yes, lots of exciting things. All right, so now we're open for questions, more questions. Michael's talking about steam heating. You guys have any questions about equipment, site issues, building? I think you've seen the video with that in it, where he talks about laying out the equipment in the brewery so you don't have a lot of lines crisscrossing.
Yeah, let's talk about the building a little bit too, because we've run into this, interestingly, in San Francisco quite a bit with the real estate. I think we'll run into it in New York City. So places where real estate is extremely expensive. And what winds up happening is landlords, like breweries, they know that they're in activating, they activate their real estate. Especially if they've got a lot of holdings in one area, they want a lot of foot traffic, so they're very eager to get breweries to come in. Rule of thumb for me, in my experience, is try and be on a corner. If you want to have the best possible building for a brewery, try and be on a corner. That way you've got exposure on 2 streets. Second thing, single-story building is way preferable over a building with multiple stories. If you have a building with multiple stories, a building that does not have people living upstairs is preferable over a building that has commercial upstairs. These are kind of a hierarchy. Now in San Francisco, what I find is that condominiums wind up with breweries on the first floor. Really tough stuff to work with. A lot of times venting issues can be astronomically difficult to get through. Sometimes if they built the building and they thought about it, they'll put a duct chase up in the building, a rated chase, but typically they're not big enough for everything that you need to do in a brewery, so you may wind up having to do something through a side wall, which could be a courtyard behind, or it could be the front wall of the building. And as we all know, breweries, we may like the smell of them, but I can tell you that people living in condominiums, they may like it for a little while, but you're not going to like it forever. So just some kind of rules of thumb. Single-story buildings are great. You go right through the roof, you bet, problem solved.
Here's an easy one. Jacob, is there a rule of thumb about how much cost you expect to recover when selling a used system? Does it vary based on stock?
Right now, I think you get dollar for dollar if you had a system available and somebody out there wants to buy it at the right size. Yeah, most of the breweries probably, I don't know, you know what percent are 3 to 15 barrel smaller size. 60 breweries running probably 5, 7, 8,000 and less barrels per year are really hot right now. So I think if you had a brewery in your pocket, you could sell it in a minute for everything that you bought it for. Maybe you would make money on it.
Let's see. How much gas to run a 20-barrel steam brew house with a 40-barrel hot liquor tank?
Okay, where's that question? I want to read that.
Right here.
How much gas to run a 20-barrel steam brew house and a 40-barrel hot liquor tank? Okay, so that 20-barrel steam brew house, I'm going to tell you that you probably should get like a 2.5 million BTU boiler for that, which that gas line, your gas guy is going to let you know what that means, but I'm going to guess it's going to be 1.5 inches or maybe even a 2-inch gas line. It's going to be a substantial amount. But it's going to be predicated on what the boiler, how efficient the boiler is, and what you ultimately put in.
Okay, then Ben wants to know, how do you differentiate your product from Chinese product that costs thousands less?
Right, that'd be nice.
Wait, Ben, did you guys just buy those 800-barrel tanks were from China? Yeah, you want to text this?
Yeah, I will. Yes, I will.
That's his favorite topic, is talking about Chinese equipment.
Yeah, I'm obviously not a big proponent of Chinese equipment. We have actually imported and sold a few Chinese tanks, and I thought that we had nailed. I mean, absolutely nailed. I gave him a 20-page specification on what my expectation was in order to sell tanks through Portland Kettle Works. One shipment, one and out. I'm done. I won't do them again. The quality control issues are astronomical, and we can't stand behind them the way we stand behind our equipment. It's just night and day. A lot of horror stories. There's also a lot of good stuff done with Chinese. I mean, if the product is controlled by people that are selling it in the United States, in the factories in China, I think you can get good product from it. But by and far, most of it isn't that way. And you wind up, you basically pay twice. You pay with inefficiencies in your system right away. You may pay with serious issues in your system right away, which, I mean, you can Google them and you can see what's out there. You may wind up with stuff that you can't use. We had one client that actually went to China and bought tanks, didn't go himself, but bought tanks and directly imported them, bought our brew house. The tank showed up, he called us and asked me to fix the tanks, had them bring them to our shop, and I told him that the cost to repair the tanks was going to be, if they could be repaired, would be more than just having us build them new ones. And so ultimately that's when we trashed his tanks and built them new ones. And the inside of the tanks were pitted completely on the inside, all walls completely pitted. And what I explained to him is, we could go in and try and grind those pits out, but we didn't know if it was in the steel all the way through. And if it was, then you're just opening more pits as you grind. So I think he ultimately got some of his money back for him, but I don't know if he got all of it.
Okay, so Bob has a question. I'm looking at the pieces. Is 10,000 square feet adequate for a 20-barrel brew house with tanks, warehousing, tasting room, chiller, room for growth, but no restaurant? Okay, Bob, no restaurant is mentioned here. It's a tasting room. Future canning line.
What size system are we talking
20
about?
barrel.
20 barrel. Yes. Keep in mind, ceiling height is also an important factor, because if you don't have ceiling height, you eat up floor space with squatty tanks. They have to get wide. I'd like to see, I mean, in the best case scenario, 20-foot ceilings are great, 16 are good, 12 are manageable. When you start getting under that, it gets tight. And you work, then you begin to engineer your brewery around your head height. So yeah, 10,000 square feet is good.
21 to 23 foot ceiling.
Yeah, you're good. You're fine. Take a lot of beer in there.
Okay, let's see what Christian is saying. Is it reasonably feasible to have the brew house in an outbuilding with the cold room and bright serving tanks in the main building along with the retail space.
Outlook.
Kind of gets into your line transfer issue.
You can do it, and it's you know, I don't know where you are. I think that I would want to look at the scenario, look at the buildings, understand what sort of space planning you have going on. It can certainly be manifolded so that you set up sanitary pipe between the brew house and fermenter area and the cold room, and that's typically the way that we would suggest doing it. If you have a long run, just get some sanitary pipe in so you don't have to lay hose out to go back and forth. That doesn't make sense. But sure, anything's possible. You know, it's what we overcome challenging situations all the time.
This gets to Chad's question. What is your expected cost increase to build a custom-sized brew system? For example, it's best to have a nice high ceiling, but low ceilings might drive shorter vessels.
Yeah, you know, it doesn't really affect the cost of the system. Right now, we're built the Pearl Brewery. Have you ever heard of them in Texas, San Antonio? So they went out of business. Now there's somebody bought the building and they're rehabbing and doing like a beautiful job of making a new brewery in there. We're going to install the brewing system. They're putting in a 15-barrel system, and 80% of the brewing area has 8-foot ceilings. So all of the fermenters are 8 feet tall. The bright tank, so their walk-in cooler, we got 9 feet. The largest tank, we have a 30-barrel, those are all 15s. We have a 30-barrel bright tank that's going into like a 10-foot ceiling height. So it's doable. It's really difficult and challenging. The brewers want 30-barrel tanks, but it's just not to be. There's no way in 8 feet that you're going to be able to put them in. I think even if it was all cone at 60 degrees, you still wouldn't even get close. So yeah, there are challenges when you drop the ceiling height, and we generally engineer the system to the space, and if it's not just obscenely crazy, the cost is what it is. We don't charge more to do the custom work.
And the height that you would suggest for a 7-to-10-barrel system?
Minimum, you know, I mean, I like to see 12 feet. 12 feet's great. You know, we can work around 12 feet all day long. It gives you some head space when you're standing up on the brewing platform, and when you get to 10, it gets tough. We need to start talking about dropping the brewing platform. We have to do some funny things to make the system work for you, and you're going to lose a little bit of efficiency in how you operate. Not impossible, but better to have a little bit more.
Let's see. When I come to you with my brewery plan for a serious quote, how much and what info are you going to need to get the ball rolling ASAP?
Okay, so
you might want to also mention the returning the state student deal.
Yeah, Joe Watzig, so before we started, he's actually here in the room with me right now, mentioned that, as we were talking on this on the way back on the story today, that I was talking about how we process quotes, because we get tons and tons of quotes, or requests for quotes in, all different sizes, and it's difficult to keep up with the workload for people looking for equipment. So he prioritizes people who have space and have financing. If you have space and financing, you move up to a higher level in our quotation system. If you have one or the other, you're kind of in the middle. If you have neither, you've sort of filtered yourself down to the bottom. And that's why I think some of you guys that have sent requests for quotes in probably said no space, no financing, and you're finding that you're not getting any service from us. At the very bottom of our quote page, there's a box down there. What's that called, Joe? It's a reference code. If you put in there PSU, then Joe, what we'll do is we'll generate a quote for you right away. So you'll go up as if you had space and financing, and we'll get you a quote so that you guys can keep working towards.
One word, no periods, no Portland State, PSU.
Just PSU, capital letters.
See, you get so many benefits in this program. Let's see.
Did I answer that question?
I think so.
Okay.
Well, it kind of combines with how far are you currently booked?
Yeah, so pretty quick, we answer quotes all day, every day. Two guys doing it, Chris Sears and Joe Watzig. It depends on where you are in the country. Joe is in the west, W. Watzig west, Sears is in the east. One of them will pick it up and get something back to you. Right now, we are selling in June, July. Yep. So June.
3, then we can get it.
Yeah, for smaller systems, we can turn out pretty quickly, but June, July on larger systems. And yep, so that pretty much takes care of that.
So basically, he's saying a 3-barrel system is the one that you could get in April.
Mm-hmm.
But anything else, you'd have to wait to June or July. Do you offer site design and layout when purchasing a system? Or is that a service you offer separately as a consultant?
Typically what happens is you've hired an architect because the issue that you're going to have is you have to get a stamped set of plans from the city in order to get your brewery going. There may be some structural work that needs to be done, but certainly the architect has to deal with egress issues and life safety issues at a minimum. And what we actually like to get is your brewery room on paper. You don't really aren't too concerned about what your bar is going to look like or your tasting room or anything else, your kitchen. We just want to know what your brewing room looks like. And what we'll do with that is have a series of conversations with you and hopefully your brewer, if you are the brewer, great, about layout and what's going to be most efficient in that room from all standpoints, plumbing, where we're going to put the mill, where we're going to put the grain room, if there's boiler, where it's going to be, how, where the gas connections are, how you're going to vent everything out of the building. We look at all of that stuff at that time. And that is not, that's for free, but it comes with the purchase of the system.
There's a little bantering going on about what about these very large plastic cone bottom tanks that are a fraction of the price? I know they're attractive and not nearly as attractive. Do you know any breweries currently using them on a large scale?
Not on a large scale. I know that breweries on smaller, very tight budget 3-barrel systems, there are folks out there that are using those the smaller tanks. I don't know anybody that uses them beyond that size. The issues with that tank is, like you said, is you don't have jacketing, so your fermentation. The key, having brewed today and with it, Brewing, that guy who runs the brewery, Kevin Shaw, there is an absolute, he's just a rock star brewer, and he is so precise about how he brews. His mashing in and the entire process is nailed from soup to nuts. When you go away from glycol-cooled fermenters, you begin to take big pieces out of the pie to be able to control what it is that you're trying to create. It's like throwing the recipe out the window and just throwing ingredients in the pot. So you're gonna sacrifice consistency, which in the end can be pretty damaging to your reputation. If your beer is good one week and people come, they drink and they love it, and they come back with all their friends the next time and it's terrible, tough to overcome stuff like that. So I get the issue of budget. I would say more important to wait and get your budget in line and buy the best possible equipment you can so that you can consistently make your product the way you want it to taste. It's that spiking and the ups and downs and the variations in the fermentation process will kill you when it comes to getting a consistent product out. Mm-hmm. Then also, I will say those plastic tanks, if you scratch them, you run a very good risk of contaminating your beer in the fermentation process also. The tank's in great shape on the inside, they work, but with a scratch in them, you can get bacteria build up and you're dead. You can probably talk to that as well.
Yeah. I guess, the only places I really recommend people using the plastic is for cider making in the IBCs, those square tanks, because it's a great way to start out with cider making and you don't have as many problems essentially as you have in the beer world. Okay.
And they go to scratches and issues, so he knows that.
Digging all 20-barrel system estimate of walk-in, drive-in, chiller size. We're canning in the future. 500 square feet? At least.
Mm-hmm.
Probably kind of for double that.
Yeah, 1,000 square feet is reasonable.
Anyhow, Guys, it's 7 o'clock, so I hope everybody got most of their questions answered. I want to say thanks to Thad.
Thank you.
I think we have his, I'll post the slides, but he has some new slides he wanted me to include. So we'll get an updated version of the schematics, and I'll redo the slides and post them for you. Okay, so I hope everybody enjoyed that and got something out of it. Looks like
Thanks,
for the audience.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye, guys, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.